Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Everything Dodgeball podcast. I'm your host, Stefan Leitinger. And today I have two absolute champions, two ladies everyone knows in the dodgeball world, and probably one of the hardest throwers out there. So that is always something that is very impressive if you see that on the women's side, and that stands out quite prominently. So I'm really glad to have you here, guys. I'll start with you, Lauren. Just give the listeners a little bit of a history overview. Who are you? What have you done in the world of dodgeball? And yeah, what's your story?
What's my story? I'm Lauren Gallagher. I play for England and London Storm at home. I've been playing for, I think it's about 4 years now. So I started at university, kind of as more of a social thing, and then played competitively after that. And then I've been part of the England setup for about 2, 3 years now. Graz, the World Championships last year was my first kind of proper debut for England, which was super exciting. And then this was recently my first ever Euros. So I did go to Osijek, went along as a kind of supporter, cheering everybody on. Was kind of very keen very quickly, and then yeah, kind of finding my feet in the international world at the moment.
That is awesome. So, like, how did you get into the English squad in 4 years? What was like your prior history in sports? What did you do before that?
I played a lot of sports when I was at school, a lot of like team-based sports as well. So rugby predominantly, and hockey as well. And then I also rode horses, but it's not very team sport. Obviously, that's quite individual, but it kept me nice and fit. And then I kind of have just always really enjoyed being like athletic and those sorts of things. So when I started at university, I was one of those people that just wanted to try everything to see what I enjoyed. And then it was actually my mum had we like watching the dodgeball movie when we're having like a girls' night and stuff. So she was like, "Oh my god, your university is doing like a dodgeball session. We love the movie. You should go along." And I was like, "Haha, yeah, okay, okay, we'll see how it goes." Um, so I rocked up to one session and dragged my flatmates along. Took some tinnies with. Had no idea what was happening. It looked like pure chaos from absolutely everybody. And then one of the guys there, James Barlow, he was like, "Oh, we're actually short for some players for a competition on the weekend. Do you want to come along?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Like, why not? I've got nothing to lose." And then spent the entire 2 hour journey there explaining all of the rules, and it blew my mind. I was like, "What have I signed myself up for?" But I had a great time, and I have played dodgeball ever since. So.
Awesome. That is really like an absolute fast track. So I know Cati's history when she started. So basically, the first time I met her, she was wearing a Superwoman costume, if I'm not mistaken. And the only thing I remember was in Innsbruck at a beach tournament. And I just remember we were playing there. We were like in Innsbruck, there wasn't any dodgeball scene. So we had a really experienced team that has already played for 2 or 3 years, which was back then the most experience you could get in dodgeball. And then we just went there, and there were lots of new players we have never seen. And just Cati stood out from the beginning. We were like, okay, she just throws like a cannon. We gotta get her for the national team. So, Cati, for everyone who still doesn't know you, who are you? How did you get into dodgeball, and what's your side of that story?
Hello, I'm Cati Weber, and yeah, you took away the part of how I started dodgeball. So there was the Beach Dodgeball Cup in Innsbruck, and we just joined for fun. And after the tournament, I got a message from Nico, and she asked me if I wanted to join the national team. And I thought, well, I'm 25. I will probably not make it in any other national team, so why not? And back then, it was luckily only three ball dodgeball, so less complicated than it is now. And I joined 1.5 days of the national team trainings camp and then went to the Euros in Belfast, not even knowing all rules or actually not really knowing what I was doing besides throwing balls, dodging them, and trying to catch. And yeah, I've been on the national team ever since. And my three home clubs are the Harlem Turtles in the Netherlands, the Dodgeball Ninjas in Vienna, and the club I didn't, yeah, I started training in Innsbruck. I was not the founder of the dodgeball Tyrol Turtles, but yeah, that's the club of my heart, I would say, because yeah, I started it, and yeah, but I'm not allowed to play for them in league, so that's why I have the dodgeball ninjas in Vienna as well.
Okay, perfect. So it seems like there's a bit of a same history where you were already at university or somewhere around that age, and you also, like, I think, did a lot of sports in your youth and were like a jack of all trades, and then found dodgeball. And at that time, it was just the perfect fit that also made it possible to play at an international stage. So what was it actually like playing at the international stage? And I'm going back to you, Lauren. Was that something that you, or when was that an aspect that you thought about or thought that would be possible for you?
I think we had England had announced that they were doing kind of trials for their development squad. And at that kind of period of time, I thought I was playing really well at university level. So I was like, like maybe this could be on the cards. I had a couple of friends, and we were all kind of like, oh, maybe we'll go along to trials, like see how it goes. I actually, I actually went along to the first trial and split my chin open going for a catch in the first 10 minutes of the session. So I didn't even get to trial properly. And then had to wait a while, but eventually managed to kind of get into the setup through that. So I think just kind of like, yeah, playing university level, doing quite well with my team. I was like, maybe this is on the cards for me, and kind of just playing community dodgeball at that point with, I think it was Wessex at that time.
Okay.
I was like, this could be something that I could get myself into and kind of work my way up the levels. And then we were in the development team and went along to WEC, did really well. I had a fantastic time. It was so cool seeing like all the other nations, like meeting loads of new people and kind of getting to play with like my friends and stuff as well. And then kind of got invited along to kind of like the senior sessions. And then we knew that Graz was coming up, so kind of started really kind of pushing hard, kind of like outside of dodgeball training and stuff as well. And was like, cool, I want to kind of get myself to Worlds as kind of one of the newer players in the squad, and I managed to do that. So I was very very happy. And then yeah, same again for Euros. Was just kind of like I want to push myself even further and just basically like really like solidify myself in the team.
That is awesome. So before we get into like that sort of professional or competitive dodgeball topic, I want to maybe stick a little bit with that social topic, because you both got in at a time where it was, as you said, you already had experienced a lot of different sports, done a lot, and we're at an age where definitely usual professional sport is not an option. So, and then you find it through university or through a fun tournament, and basically the first instinct that drives you there is mostly social, right? Was that for
Yeah.
both of you? Yeah. So how long did it take for you to like take the sport? Especially, I'm gonna start with Cati on this one, because you joined dodgeball much earlier, where it wasn't that professional, where it was already still three ball dodgeball. So like, how long did it take for you to really think about dodgeball as a competitive sport, as something that you that is more than just a social hobby?
That's actually a good question. So the first year was definitely social because I didn't even know how it worked. But you mentioned the community aspect, and that's also something that really got me hooked pretty quickly. And I think it was the season afterwards that the league started in Austria, and that's actually what added the competitive level to it for me. And then, of course, winning the first Euros in 2016, yeah, that made it really competitive because from then onwards, we just wanted to keep winning.
Mhm. Okay, and for you, Lauren, it seems like it had a much shorter timeline, the same sort of story, but just shortened up drastically.
Yeah, I think so. I would have started uni in the September, and I think by the following Jan, I had started playing like our national league, so got into it kind of like super quickly. But I still play socially as much as possible. Like I'm a really firm believer that if you're having a good time and socializing and stuff while doing the sport, you're going to have a better time playing competitively as well. So I still try to use it a kind of as a social aspect as much as possible, even like just meeting people that I know through dodgeball, not necessarily playing dodgeball like now. Like I've made some really good friends and stuff. Um, so I got into the competitive side very quickly, but like I don't ever want to neglect like the social side of it because I think it's super important to maintain that balance between the both of them. And I think my kind of university team at that point was quite heavily social still, for at least my first kind of year. I think most of the players, maybe like 60 or 70% of the club, were still using it to just kind of go out and get pissed and go on bar crawls and throw balls at each other like for a couple of hours in the hall and stuff. And that still happens now. But it's a bit more serious. But yeah, I think because I got roped into that competition, kind of asked to go along because they were short for players quite quickly. It then meant that I was just kind of roped into the community dodgeball side, like within like a few months. And same as kind of Cati was saying about like as soon as you start playing community dodgeball in the league and stuff, you get hooked really quickly. And just kind of stuck around and kept having a good time.
That is what dodgeball is still to this day, I would say, mostly about. And then there is that competitive side. And it seems, as you said, with your past, you are sport people and competitive people. So that side is always nice to have as like follow along. And then maybe the balance tends to swing more to one side or the other, but it's pretty much a combination of both of those sides, which make it so special yet. So now at this point, there are the Youth European Championships in Saragossa, and maybe you saw a few games today. And so I think like there's a really good new development in the dodgeball world, which makes it also much more of a usual sport. And you have like still the ways where you get in through universities in England, but especially in Austria, we really try to push the youth side as well and like grow the sport from the bottom, from the bottom up. Um, so back then when we started, it was more or less all people in our age group, and that has changed a little bit. But for you, starting 4 years ago, I think the youth side of England wasn't really developed at that point. How tough was it to get into such an established squad? And my internet connection is gone.
I think you're asking about the kind of development side of England. So I'll just talk about that a bit. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, we've had the last couple of years, we've had a really established kind of development squad. We kind of hold a trials for it every year. It's kind of open to kind of younger players or players that have maybe only a year or so experience. And it's been really kind of crucial, I think, for kind of the England as an entire setup, because it means that we can get people in and training at a really high level really quickly, and just give them as much experience as possible and provide people with the opportunity to move up to kind of like senior and stuff as well. And I think you can see that in the squads that we take every year. Across kind of men's and women's, there's always like one or two people that are completely brand new to the club, to the squad, sorry. So it's really nice to kind of be able to provide players with that opportunity and know that there is that kind of pathway for players to take. And I think also
Yeah.
there's been a really big push from our kind of national governing body with kind of like junior championships. So you're seeing a lot more of events in like primary schools and secondary schools and stuff as well. And it's nice to see that it's being taken a bit more seriously in England now than just kind of like PE lessons at school. And players kind of getting involved with that. And England have been really supportive of that. And have done, I think, a great job with the juniors and stuff. Like we've managed to enter quite a few teams into this juniors. I'm definitely going to try and catch a few of the games each day where I can. I know that England got some good wins today as well, so that was really impressive to see. And then hopefully these players will just kind of keep developing and might be the starting six lineup in 4 or 5 years' time. Who knows? So yeah, I think the England management team have done a really good job of providing those kind of opportunities for the younger players.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that what I wanted to get in before my internet and connection got lost on me again was basically like the change in how you get into the national squad. So back when we started, it was just there was not really a national squad, and we started with the development of one. And when you started, there was already a really established squad of English Lions and a really good and successful women's team. So how tough and hard was it to get into that squad? And like over the last 2 years or 1.5 years, how was that process of integrating into that team for you personally?
Oh, it's been really hard. I think like the standard of like the girls especially is so high, and when the bar's that high, you really have to absolutely work your ass off to be able to get into the team. And not necessarily prove yourself. I think sometimes players can kind of go in with this mindset that they need to like be the best, but actually like you just need to be contributing to the team. So I think I took a bit more of that mindset of like, where do I fit into this squad, and like what can I do to maximize my chances of kind of working with this team and like this wonderful group of girls. So I think like firstly just kind of taking the step of being like, oh, I'm going to sign myself up for the development squad trials, and just kind of seeing what I could do there. And then once that was kind of, I was trying to make the most of those sessions, like working hard. And I think like, especially I'm, for those who haven't met me, I'm like 5'10". I'm quite tall. I'm built to throw quite well and stuff. Like I'm gonna have good raw ability, but actually, the higher you get, it's also more about the decisions and stuff as well. So I was making sure that every training session that I was going to, I was asking all the super experienced players questions, making sure that I was doing the right thing, and kind of yeah, just contributing in the best way as possible, and then just kind of maintaining that sort of ability. And I think just kind of proving that I had the mindset and the kind of fight to want the wins and to kind of get every single medal that I can. And I think that's kind of paid off well, because I think I definitely feel more kind of secure in the team, especially kind of after Euros. I was happy with how I played and stuff as well. So, but yeah, hard work when the girls are pretty good at what they do.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I think that is like the old school way you got into a team. You just went into dodgeball, found you have a liking and some talent for it, and then you just push and show the will and try to just establish yourself on the team. And I think in the future it's going to be a much longer process where you go through the age divisions and really at that point push slowly into that national squad, which gonna be is gonna be quite a different story, but also really cool to see that leveling up of the whole game. So in that regard of like integrating into the team, and that's something that's always very interesting to me. So I want to talk to you, Katya, about that because first of all, you weren't part of the really core like all dodgeball started in Vienna, and there was basically no one except for you coming from Innsbruck and trying to integrate into that team. So I want to start the first question like how tough was it to get into that community? And for you, obviously, you're a very open person and you apparently find places for yourself to play dodgeball all over the world. But then again, once you had Leni, your daughter, and then had to like make a comeback basically. So how tough was it to again like get a place into that team where the team was much more developed and it's much harder to find a spot for yourself? And how did that like differ in your experience?
Well, so yeah, what you mentioned before. So I was the only one from Innsbruck, which, for those who don't know Austria so well, is like a 5 hours drive from Vienna. So every national team training basically meant spending a whole weekend in Vienna. It also meant that I couldn't join a lot of trainings because, yeah, dodgeball is expensive enough, but I also needed to save some money to go to competition. And so I was used to not training so much with the team, usually just a few times before Euros or Worlds. And yeah, then with Lainey, it surely didn't get easier because I needed to organize babysitting, and yeah, my parents helped out a lot. And yeah, it didn't make it easier, but it helped me that I had the experience uh, that it was never easy for me to train with the team or to
Mhm.
actually make it to team trainings. And yeah, I think it worked really well, though I noticed that competition, it was completely different because you might want to join a team event, but then you have to take care of your child instead, and you can't join that team event, or yeah, you can't socialize so much. Yeah, it was definitely different and more challenging, but yeah, it's just part of having a child, I would say.
And having a child grow up in the dodgeball community.
Yeah,
So
which I think is amazing. And yeah, yeah, it's great for her. And I really appreciate how much other people take care of her and support me in getting training time, or yeah, just yeah, take away some of the responsibilities around the dodgeball tournament or training when she's with me.
yeah, yeah, that is. I we saw it with the Kulnik kids, and now with Lena, it's just really cool seeing kids in that environment and just seeing them grow up next to the court and become hopefully the next dodgeball superstars. So that I just wanted to point out basically like there are so many different ways to get into dodgeball, and if you want to make it work, you'll make it work. And whether you have children or rats or are 5 hours away or 3 countries away or whatever it is, if there's a will and there's a way, and that is like also really cool that it is still possible to play at a competitive level, but you have to bring some basic skills with and a lot of motivation and also um, money in the end to just afford all of that. No, but I think that is just maybe interesting for people who just want to, who have that dream and know that there are going to be a lot of obstacles in the way, but it's still definitely doable. And so I want to get a little bit into the competitive side of the whole thing. And I want to basically start from Osijek, where England won for the first time in many, many years against Austria in the final and became European champions. And that was obviously before your time or when you just started um, getting into that national squad. And so, talk to me, Lauren. So, you've known the English women's team basically from one of their highest points in the last few years. And talk to me about your process going into the preparation for Graz, finding your spot, trying to push for a spot on the team, but also like the mentality of the whole team going for that world title and with the self-confidence that they got from Osijek. What was the vibes? What was your personal expectations and goals? Yeah.
Um, yeah, so Osijek was the kind of first like major like international dodgeball event that I had gone to watch. And like the atmosphere was crazy, like in a good way. Like so many people, so many different games going on. Like everyone just looked like they were having a fantastic time. Um, and it was really lovely to kind of see and kind of be part of the experience, even just as a spectator. And then when the girls won that final, especially in those kind of last few moments and seeing them all to come together to kind of celebrate, and just seeing that all their hard work had kind of paid off, I was like, damn, like that's something I really want to be part of. And that was just really kind of like an inspirational moment. For me, and just kind of, yeah, I was like, this is a sort of setup and like space that I want to be included in, and not as a spectator, hopefully. So yeah, and then kind of in that time frame then got kind of selected, for England. And then I knew we had Graz coming up. So it was a really big push for me being like, okay, I really want to just kind of get into this team. Even if I just go to Graz and I literally play 3 sets, like I'll be happy. Like if I get any time on court, like it's going to be of benefit to me and stuff. And I think like mentioning the kind of social aspect beforehand and about people having a good time beforehand with kind of Graz, I was like, I know that I play best if I'm just enjoying myself. Like I've never played these teams before. It's a whole new experience, but if I'm there and I'm having a good time and I'm making sure that I'm experiencing everything that I can, I'm probably going to end up playing a lot more dodgeball than kind of I might particularly hope for. So I think yeah, like kind of in the lead up, I was very much of the mindset of like any kind of group stage game time would be fantastic. Like it's a learning experience for me. And then I was playing really well throughout the group stages. I was like, I think I was quite consistent in what I was doing. And then we kind of one of the scary moments for me is kind of we had a message from our coach of who the starting lineup for the Austria game would be in the groups, and I was on the starting lineup, and like my mind was like, wow, this is crazy, like this is not something I had kind of ever expected, because obviously that's quite a big game. Having last time the girls played them had obviously beaten them in the final, so it was like a really big thing. And I was just like, I'm new. This is probably going to play to England's advantage a little bit as well. Like obviously Austria girls don't know me. Hopefully this will kind of help. Obviously the result didn't go our way, but I think I learned a lot from that game. I was like, I'm playing the highest standard of kind of dodgeball there is. So I kind of got everything I wanted to from my kind of grass experience, and kind of like, yeah, just getting game time really. So it was super fun. It was awesome to kind of meet lots of new people as well, and just kind of see the difference in standard between kind of like national events and international events. Um, but it was definitely intimidating at times, especially like when you hear about these particular players that are like ridiculously good, like Lisa, for example, in Austria. Like you hear these amazing things about her, and then you see her in person, you're like, oh my god, like yeah, she's quite intimidating. Um, so it was just yeah, it was just kind of for personal aims, it was just game time, and I was really happy that's kind of started in the starting six for a lot of the games, kind of leading up, kind of in the knockout stages as well. So I definitely kind of went above my own expectations in that aspect. I think kind of from a team perspective, um, obviously everyone's kind of riding off of the high of winning Euros in Osijek. I'm just wanting to kind of basically carry over that sort of momentum. Obviously, there was a few players difference. Like I was new to the setup, um, and then we kind of didn't have a couple of others. So it was potentially a little bit different, and we needed to try a few different things. So I think a big push for us was basically making sure that we're maintaining the standard that we had played in Osijek, and just kind of working on like team cohesion and making sure that we were executing everything that we'd been working on in training, and stuff. And I think that really kind of shone through in some of the games that we played, where we just kind of like dominated teams, and played like really excellent textbook dodgeball per se. Um, I think obviously the end result and the loss to NI was a little disappointing, and kind of not what we had hoped for. But from a wider team perspective, it was also a learning curve of kind of like, okay, we now know what we need to do next time, um, and we know what we need to kind of the changes and stuff that we need to make. So it was a super fun first experience of international dodgeball.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. And you definitely made an impact in your first tournament. So I don't know, someone has a little bit of a noise in the background. I don't know if it's you or Cati. It's something, it seems like a washing machine. I think it's Cati, yeah. Okay, yeah. I don't know what it is. Yeah, but it's gone now. So I've also just put my video out at some point because my connection is not that stable and it seems to be working much better like this. So I'm just gonna hop in and out with my camera. So yeah, I'm gonna from this go to Kati. Like, give me a little bit of an overview of your world's experience for a setup to going into Euros preparation afterwards. So what was like your expectations? You came from a loss from Osijek into Graz, and also it was maybe a more difficult time preparing from the Netherlands out and with a 1 year old. So how was your journey to Graz, and what did you how did you like live through that tournament?
Well, for me, it was actually not such a big loss. I guess the majority would disagree, but for me, it was like winning already by being able to attend Osijek. And I was super happy. And yeah, I also didn't expect to play in the finals at all. And yeah, I was probably the least disappointed of all. And I also think it was a good moment to lose because we won so many years in a row. And I could really see such a huge motivation for Graz because of this loss. Um, yeah, that I think personally it wasn't that bad.
Mhm.
And yeah, for Graz, yeah, as usual, I couldn't attend a lot of trainings, but we had a really good trainings camp, and I think that helped a lot. And everybody else trained weekly to prepare for it, and everybody was hyped. And yeah, it was really great to see like how motivated everybody was to win this title and beat England again. Like we analyzed England, the games, like yeah, we knew everything, or at least how they played back then, and we felt really, really well prepared, and the team spirit was great. And yeah, then you came up with the idea of the ice hockey lineups, and I think yeah, it was an amazing idea because usually, in my opinion, it was not necessarily the six players with the best skills who played the finals, but those who had most self confidence in that moment. And through the hockey lineups, everybody was self confident, everybody relied on the other players. Like it didn't matter who was left on the court, we all had trust that these players left would just win the game. And yeah, that was really some amazing spirit. um yeah.
Okay, but maybe you want to get into that a little bit as well, because like the ice hockey lineup worked out very well at the World Cup in Graz, and I personally was a big fan of it. But you back then weren't the biggest fan of it, or in afterwards at least, as I remember.
Yeah, that's right. There's another point to it. So I only got to the women's team and not to the mixed team. And on the women's team, I had the middle position. And yeah, well, we were just so good and so overpowered that as a middle player, you basically spent all games dodging a little bit. And I remember one group stage game where, like, I think I got to the corner twice in the game, even though I stayed till the end in most sets because nobody just got hit out. And
Yeah.
so it got a little bit boring for me because all I did was throwing, blocking, and dodging. And yeah, often the balls were not even catchable. And but no pre throws, post throws. Yeah, it was just not the whole package of dodgeball for me. And it was really hard to stay focused. And yeah, I I didn't really feel that much challenge. It shouldn't sound like overconfident or anything. I hope I don't didn't put it the wrong way. But yeah, I yeah didn't enjoy it as much as I usually did.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair, and I think that is like the bad thing, or if there is like as a coach, that was amazing because obviously if you didn't have too much to do, then that was a very stress free experience for me as well, which was awesome. And that was basically the whole tournament. So I could really, because the thing was for me, in Osijek, I really felt that I we didn't have a great preparation, and also I didn't have a lot of time because I got my second kid and other stuff. So I felt like the preparation, the focus wasn't as much on the women's team as it was in the past. And I felt that I had let the team down a little bit because I focused much more on the mixed and the men's side. And so I also felt not really disappointed. I was obviously saddened for the girls that we didn't win that game, but also looking forward to Graz. I was a little bit happy about it, or not happy about it, but I thought it might be a good thing for Graz. And so we really tried to switch it up. And obviously it worked out perfectly from a result perspective, but for individual players, you don't get as much. What's the word I'm looking for? Like you don't have to handle as much of the responsibility for some players that are used to handle more of the burden, and vice versa. So some players were really happy that they got to play in those matches, and other players had who are used to more playing time, and you were definitely one of those. Maybe felt a little bit shortened, which is just a part of team sport. But so let me or tell me about like what did that do for you personally in order of looking towards the next Euros, and did that motivate you? Did you want to go even harder? Did that frustrate you? What was like your personal feeling towards that coming from Graz to Limerick?
So the frustration was mostly in Graz, but after the tournament, I also asked you and other coaches for feedback. And yeah, my team here in the Netherlands with Mikai, who you had in the podcast earlier, and Ave, they're all super motivated. And we all watched back games and immediately made a plan like, how can we all improve? And um, my motivation was to, yeah, just improve on the points where I got the feedback, and yeah, to help myself to get more to the wing position again, and also to get to the mixed team again. And yeah, so the first month I was maybe frustrated, but afterwards I was motivated again. And what I didn't say before was, I think what I found really difficult was, if you didn't have much to do in a game for, let's say, half a game, and then you suddenly ended up and it was expected that you then do, or expected, maybe I expected it from myself, but that I then do good pre or post throws without having done it in the entire game, that was very difficult. To sum it up, it was an unusual role for me because I'm really used to be challenged, and I really like it if it's tight games and I know I have to perform at my best. Otherwise, the team might lose, and this was just not the case because everybody was so on fire. But yeah, it was fine. And from a coach's perspective, I think it was the right choice because a coach needs to make a team with filling all positions with players who know what they are doing. And this is what happened. I mean, we really played so well and we were so much on fire. And so I think from coach's perspective, it it was the right choice. And it's not the task of a coach to make everybody always happy, but um, it yeah, it is. That's the task. And I think that my main disappointment mostly came from the private side. And I want to start there a little bit earlier. So I moved to the Netherlands at the beginning of 2023 when I was halfway through pregnancy. And it was really tough for me because I absolutely loved Innsbruck and I gave up so much, and I absolutely struggled there. And on top of it, being pregnant as a sportswoman, It is rough, I have to say. As much as it is impressive what the body can do, as hard it is to just sit aside and watch people playing dodgeball and not being able to join much. And I also talked to other female players who've been pregnant or are pregnant, and they all shared the same struggle as I had. And I was just used, like from age 10 onwards, to do 10 to 20 hours of sports, and suddenly I was limited to going swimming and cycling around a little bit instead of doing all these ball sports I loved, because dodgeball is just the worst sports if you're pregnant. And yeah, that was really, really rough for me. And so after I got Laney, I really needed these Euros in Croatia, and I was looking so much forward to it. It was really important for me to have a goal again I wanted to achieve and to get back in shape. And I was just happy to be there. And there was actually a fun side fact, like you called me before I even started playing dodgeball again if I could imagine also playing mixed back
Yeah.
then. And yeah, actually, I had no idea. And soon after I joined the first training after giving birth, it was actually in Belgium when the Dutch players had test games against Belgium, and some Antwerp players were kind enough to let us stay at their place and join the training the next day, and everything went well till at the end I ran some counter and then I felt my knee moving again, and I was like, oh damn, yeah, I'm just not fit and my body is not ready yet. And then I decided to not take that mixed spot because I didn't want to risk that the team had to play Euros with 5 women only, and I rather wanted to give somebody else a chance to play on the mixed team. And afterwards, I was super happy about it because it actually turned out that it's more of a task to attend Euros if you have a little baby and you're the only source of nutrition for the baby. So that made it very hard, and I could actually not have played more than 2 games a day. So luckily that happened back then with money. And yeah, I really enjoyed these Euros. And afterwards, it was actually my first season ever where I trained regularly, where I took part in competition, because all previous seasons, like when I started playing dodgeball, I built up dodgeball in Tyrol, but the level, of course, was quite low and it took time to develop. And actually, when I finally was at a stage where the training started being good, I tore my ACL and I had to skip an entire season. And the season after Corona hit, and yeah, it just kept going on with that, like injuries, pregnancy. So I was just super happy about my first season ever, where I could play dodgeball all year. And yeah, at this point, I want to say big thanks to all the players from Harlem, particularly because they would look after Lainey so many times. So we took Lainey to our training, and yeah, if only Leon and I shared the looking after duty, we could have only trained half of the session, but players would even come when they were injured to just look after Lainey all the sessions. So yeah, I really appreciated it, and I still do. And yeah, so how did it continue? I tried to also go to Austrian League as often as possible in trainings, but yeah, living in a different country and having a small child meant taking the day train for 13, 14 hours, taking the night train, flying. Like Lane is a really experienced flyer by now. And yeah, I really tried my best to practice and get on a high level. And yeah, then the decision was made for the mixed team for the World Cup. And I was just on the first spot if some girl got injured. And yeah, for me, it was like a massive disappointment. And not because I think that any of the girls wouldn't have deserved it, but I even think that other players who didn't make it would have deserved it as well. But dodgeball was like that one thing in the first year of Laney that, yeah, it was my only social time a week a lot of times because I didn't know anybody here. It was super important for me and the one thing to hang on. And then I was super disappointed when I didn't make it. And also my motivation for the world then really dropped through that. And I actually did feel a bit bad towards the team that I had these feelings, but I couldn't really help it. And in the end, I had a great time with the team and I really enjoyed it once I was there, but there was constantly that sort of disappointment inside me. And yeah, that's what I wanted to share as well. So that there was actually much more behind that. I wasn't happy with the World Cup and that it was probably not so much on the players' side, so to say.
Yeah,
And yeah, I also wanted to share that story because I think that a lot of dodgeball moms struggle in one or the other moment. And it's good to see that they are not alone and that, yeah, I can really recommend talking to other dodgeball moms in this regard.
absolutely. No, I think that is a really important and so powerful message as well, because I've seen my wife give birth to two children, and I know how much of a task and struggle and drainage of power and stuff that is on the body and everything, and how little sleep you get, how much it takes from you to take care of an infant. And so my wife isn't involved in the actual dodgeball, so I could never even believe, coming from that, how players would be able to come back so soon after giving birth to a baby. And so I saw it with Nico, I saw it with you, I saw it with Cati Koch, and I've changed my mind about that. And I think it is so impressive to see what is possible after being pregnant for 9 months, giving birth, breastfeeding, having zero sleep or little sleep, having a new life that you're completely responsible for. But still, there is so much um, power apparently in the female body that you find a way, and if you give yourself time and train, and you come back probably even stronger. And to be honest, I learned a lot over the last few years, because in the beginning, I would have never believed that it would be possible to play as soon as, for example, you played, I think, 3 months or four after giving birth in Osijek. And before that, I was like, that can't be done. But apparently, it was definitely possible. But it's still, as you said, it's just such a tall task, and the struggles don't end after the first few months. So having a child is just makes a lot of difference. And so I think it's really powerful to see that it's still possible. If you have a passion for a hobby, if you want to be active and participate in dodgeball at the highest level, there is definitely a way. And also the community, if you have great people around you that can support you and help you with taking care of Leni and stuff like that, and supporting you at the tournaments, that even mommy and daddy can play up to their fullest potential in the European Championships. And I think that is completely inspiring. So I'm definitely completely impressed. And I, in the beginning, definitely underestimated what was possible. And but I'm still like, when I look back to the decision for Graz, I've we knew that you were back in training and you were fit, and I still felt that there was a little bit of speed missing for the mixed game. But 1 year later, there was definitely none of that speed missing, and you, after 2 years, you're probably better than ever before. And I think that is so inspiring and special. And so, first of all, just congratulations on all of that. And I think that is really
Thanks.
cool to be very open about that for other women who will go through that process or are in that process currently, and see that if they want to, and not everyone probably wants to go back to dodgeball, but if you want to, or to any other sport, then there definitely is a way. And yeah, that is really amazing and cool to see. And you can
Yeah.
come back to the absolute top, win everything, and become MVP with a little child on your side. Really cool.
And you said you didn't believe that it was possible to come back that quickly. I guess, yeah, you are a physio, and I don't think any doctor or physio recommended it to me necessarily. Um, it surely is that I adjusted my playing style, and that, yeah, in Osijek, I tried to avoid jumping as much as possible. I hope my opponents didn't notice too much that I tried to avoid that. And I just think being pregnant and not being able to play dodgeball for such a long time, it, yeah, basically takes as long as some ACL injury.
Yeah.
Um, it just, you need some aim, and after having the baby, as beautiful as it is, the days with the baby are long, and the nights as well, as you said. And yeah, it's just suddenly you're just a mom and nothing else. And then it feels good to be something else than just a mom, to also be a dodgeball player again. And I think that was the motivation for Nico, Cati, and me, to just get back to it as quickly as our body allowed it to us. So I think it's definitely a strong point in that.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, I also took my learnings, like, I think for me it was double difficult, because it was not only getting a baby, but also moving even further away from the Austrian dodgeball. I mean, I was always far away, but then even further. And I just learned that I need to communicate better, and maybe even ask before the trainings what I need to work on, instead of just going there and seeing if, yeah, what I'm doing matches with the expectations of coaches. And also my preparation, I changed a little bit. So before Graz, I trained with the mixed, or partly even did train the mixed team in the Netherlands. And I trained with the women's team, but their playing style is very different to the Austrian women's team. So this year I asked men's coaches if I could train with the guys instead. And luckily enough, they allowed me to do so. And their playing style is much quicker, and yeah, much more like the Austrian style. And this definitely helped me on the point which you named, the speed, because yeah, if you get used to a certain playing style and then suddenly you need to switch, I think I could have adjusted it, because I'm used to adjusting in the national team, as I never got a lot of training sessions. But I understand that this was missing for the coaches up front when they had to make the decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Awesome.
yeah, generally I thought, maybe I can take those players who intend on bringing their kids along to tournaments a little bit through what to possibly expect during tournaments. Because yeah, I don't know, you don't really see what's happening at the tournament. You just see the happy kids running around. But I think there's much more happening. So, yeah, the first tournament, like, was the realization that instead of doing all these in between games, socializing things, that you just suddenly sit there with your baby and, yeah, rather had to wait if somebody came by and had time to chat than really going around and looking for players. And basically all the in between game time is then suddenly spent on the baby instead of the community, which is really a tough thing because it was one of the things I was usually looking most forward to. And all the mental load around it, like, I remember the first game I played, I stood on the court and was thinking, oh, did I tell my parents to think of this? Did I tell them that? And I noticed how I was like not in the game at all. And yeah, that was also the time when I had to find some new ritual before a game. And I then started that I tried to prepare everything in time for Lainey so I could then get away to some quiet spot and take some time for myself. And what I really like to do is thinking of dodgeball moments where I maybe turned a set or did a really great move. So just to get into believing myself and knowing that I can play well. And I kept that up to now, but yeah, like now in Limerick, I sometimes didn't have enough time before the game, and I would sit down on the court and just close my eyes, and then my teammates came up. Oh, are you all right? Is everything okay with you? And I was like, yeah, I'm perfect. I'm just trying to get ready for the game because otherwise I'm in the, yeah, child caretaking mode when I start on the court.
Mm.
And yeah, what else? Like the first tournament, in the middle of the after party, we got a call from my parents that Lainey can't fall asleep and that they don't manage, and she's crying. So we took a little break from the after party in order to quickly drive back to the accommodation, get Lainey to sleep, and then go back to the party again. So yeah, that's also maybe a little bit of a change because usually in the middle of the after party, none of us would be able to drive anymore. And yeah, then the second tournament in Graz, it was already much easier, and she had a couple of playing buddies, like your daughter, for example, which was really nice.
Yeah, that was
And the
cute.
kids could play together. Yeah. So, yeah, this year, like, it was definitely the easiest year. Now she was 2, and there were more kids again. So I would really suggest that maybe some playing area gets organized for the kids.
Yeah, we need kindergarten for dodgeball kids
Yeah,
at tournaments.
yeah,
That
and
should
some
be
kids balls.
required.
Yeah, so they can start throwing balls at each other.
Exactly. Just
But
one court for the kids.
yeah, yeah, I'm definitely in for that. And no, but it was really nice. So she had kids to play, but what probably people don't see is outside of the court time, which was pretty easy because everybody took care of her. Sometimes I came back from a game and I had to ask around in order to find out who was with Lainey at the moment. So that was pretty fun. And yeah, nights and mornings, I think everybody who has a kid knows how it is. Like, it was rough, like walking back to the accommodation for half an hour because we had to look for some swans and ducks, so that didn't make it quicker necessarily. And then my flatmates, they had often the last slot, so I had to pack Lainey, go shopping, cook dinner, and she got to bed way too late every time, which didn't stop her of getting up early in the morning, of course, and then
Obviously.
getting a kid ready in the morning. Yeah, I was warmed up by the time I was in the sports hall. I was sweaty at that time because everything took longer than expected, and I had to try really hard to make it to my first game. But still, I wouldn't do it any differently, to be honest. Like, It's hard at the start, but I think it just adds so much to her life if she becomes part of that community, as we have already mentioned about the Kulnik kids who are
Yes.
now 2 out of 3 playing at youth Euros themselves. And yeah, that's just so wonderful, would say.
Yeah.
So it's worth the effort, but it's of course easier, and I understand everybody who leaves the kids at home during such a competition
Yeah,
because
definitely. So
it makes it more of a holiday instead.
exactly. So I'm just looking forward to getting some sleep there. But thank you so much for sharing those, I think, very personal details, because I think they can be quite helpful for other people. And yeah, having a kid, it's it's really really beautiful, but it also takes a lot of work. And so it's really cool to see you integrate that into your normal life, obviously, but also into your dodgeball life, and that there is still time for mommy to play dodgeball at the highest level. That is just cool. So thanks for sharing. I hope people will appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, Lauren, what was like your outside perspective of facing that ice hockey lineup in Graz, and what was the preparation process toward Limerick for you personally and for the team? And what were like the points you were looking at regarding the Austrian team? Because I think you were pretty sure you would face us again at some point. So, what did you learn from Graz, and what did you feel about that or think about that?
Um, I think, like Cati mentioned, watching a lot of the footage back, because obviously in the moment it's really difficult to kind of know what is going well and what isn't going well when you're so kind of focused on what's happening right in front of you. Um, so I think um, Graz was definitely kind of maybe a bit of a wake up call. That kind of something needed changing. I think you guys will probably know better than me, but I think when you have a similar lineup of players year in and year out, you get used to playing a very particular style at dodgeball. And I think something that our coaching team, after kind of Graz in particular, were looking at is kind of being able to have more adaptability in both kind of lineups. And also kind of just like individual adaptability on court too. So I think a big thing for us was making sure that we were both able to kind of like everyone was able to play like a 3-ball game, a 2-ball game, and kind of make clutch plays when they need to and stuff. And just kind of having a bit more kind of general flexibility. I don't know whether because I haven't been playing for as long that my perspective is probably a little bit different, but I think watching footage back of kind of teams and stuff is super helpful. Like you get to learn kind of habits and stuff of other players. But obviously, if people become predictable, they should kind of be conscious of that. And making sure that they're not staying predictable. So there's only so much preparation you can do. I think often you kind of just need to rock up and play whatever's happening in front of you, because you never really know, no matter how much you're kind of looking at or how much you prepare, like what kind of teams are going to show up with. And I think kind of we wanted a little bit more of a focus on kind of playing probably a little bit more of an aggressive game. Especially with kind of like our single ball hits and stuff like that. I think the women's game in general is often focused a little bit more on kind of like catches and like 2-ball running counters and like those sorts of things. So we wanted to kind of push more for kind of making really aggressive hits, having really good cover, and kind of taking the opportunities when you can almost get a hit on the team opposite you and then come back without kind of having anything happen in return. And kind of if you rinse and repeat that, in theory, you should win every set. Um, so I think we're just kind of looking at changing the play style a little bit, and kind of just adding a few more things to our locker so that when we did come up against the people that we kind of know would be kind of our more difficult games. So for Limerick, obviously, I actually think one of the games that we focused on more was our Northern Ireland game. Obviously, having lost to them in Graz and then having them in the group draw was a bit like, okay, we need to definitely win this game, especially because I think losing to NI then meant that we faced Austria in the quarters, if I remember correctly. And if anything, we're hoping to face you guys in the final, and obviously it worked out that way in the end. But a lot of kind of prep went into that beforehand. Um, so I think, yeah, just analysing kind of what worked well for us and kind of what needed changing. And then kind of, I think the key thing especially kind of on both like an individual and a team level, was making sure that everything that we're kind of discussing and going over is actually being implemented. Because I think you can have lots of good ideas and stuff like that, but if you can't execute them in the moments that you need to, then it's you kind of making things a lot more difficult for yourself. So there was a lot of work that kind of went into things before Limerick, and I think we managed to execute a lot of the stuff that we wanted to, which was nice. In terms of playing the kind of ice hockey lineup, I think it's so much fun in general. Like just seeing like a whole full six people walk off and then a whole new six people walk on. It was it's ridiculous, and I think that's massive credit to kind of the depth that you have in your squad that you're able to kind of able to do that. But um, I think there's kind of pros and cons to it as well. Obviously, Cati mentioned about kind of people getting opportunities and stuff like that who kind of typically wouldn't, but then other people feeling like they fell in kind of areas where it's not their normal roles. So I think that also kind of made it a little bit more difficult to play against because the people that we were expecting to be in certain positions ended up kind of elsewhere and stuff. So that made it a bit more tricky. But it also looked so cohesive. Like it didn't matter which kind of group that you guys had on, it looked very kind of like streamlined and stuff, which was really nice to see. But I think the difficulty then is if it's something that you're staying consistent with in the whole competition, if it doesn't work out, then you're putting the girls potentially in an uncomfortable position where you'd have to make changes where they're not maybe used to playing kind of with particular people or in a particular position later on down the line. And obviously, like Cati saying how she was kind of playing in the middle, but then having to push out on the wing and having not really done many kind of pre's or posts and stuff can be a bit tricky. So I thought it was really cool. I thought it was a great idea, but I definitely see both sides to it.
Yeah, fair enough. Absolutely. There's always a little bit of a downside to it as well. So we obviously tried it again this year. So Kadi, what was like for you the difference? We had a few players step out for a season or two for our side, or maybe even retiring from after Worlds. So how did you feel like the preparation for this year's Euros went, in your opinion? Also looking at it from the outside and not being as able to be as involved, and then going to Limerick and seeing how it played out over there.
Um, well, this year Euros definitely came a little bit too early for the Austrian team, in my opinion, because our league lasted till the end of May. Then there was Vienna calling, and there was not really as much time as usual to prepare for the competition. And we didn't have a trainings camp this year, and I think this made it really difficult for us because trainings were like weekly unless there was Vienna calling or league. And there was also a weekly training on Wednesdays, which makes it, of course, impossible to join for people who don't live in Vienna. And you could see that yeah, like one weekend some people showed up and the other weekend some other players. But I only joined twice, but I have not played with everybody on these 2 weekends. So I possibly ended up playing with people in a lineup I've not trained with probably since cards or ever. And that made it surely difficult at the beginning to adapt and to adjust, to know what can I expect of my teammates. And yeah, we had a couple of new players as well. I think they played really well, our young stars, but also Rosa and Maggie. So I still think that we had a really amazing lineup of players, but we did not play enough with each other, or maybe not once in the whole preparation.
Definitely not once.
Do
Yeah.
you guys feel like that reflected through in your group stage games? Because I think a couple of times we were playing and we kind of looked over to your guys' court and we were like, oh, actually, I think Austria are finding this a little bit more tricky than we anticipated. Do you think that could have potentially contributed to why?
Yeah, definitely. So it's also that we didn't know the lineups, I don't know, maybe until the day of the competition. And yeah. that surely made it more difficult, though I felt pretty comfortable in my lineup, and it also felt like we clicked quite well. And I watched back the game against Hungary. I guess you referred to that because it was a really close game, but actually our lineup did quite well. And yeah, that's Stefan is smiling because it's also a little thing we had at Worlds going on, that it was a competition between the lineups, even though we supported each other, of course. But yeah, it surely made it more tricky that we played with players who we were not used to. And also on the wings, you might have played with a player you've never played wing before.
Yeah. So from looking again from the outside, because obviously you're looking a little bit at what is Austria doing and how are they progressing, and also what uh, do we have to prepare for. What was like your outside look on our maybe first 2 or 3 days? What was your perspective? Obviously, there was that big focus on the NI game, but also you knew if you won that, then you'd later on probably had to face us. So did that at any point? Did you have any thoughts about that or discussions, or did you plan for that during the Euros, or was it all done before?
A bit of both. Kind of, there was prep beforehand. Like we knew kind of going into this who the tougher teams would be. Like we also looked at a couple of other teams that we could potentially face. I think the Netherlands are doing a really good job at the moment, and they were another team that we were kind of looking at. Same for kind of like Italy as well. So there was kind of a few different teams. Obviously, we kind of anticipated that we would be facing you guys. So yeah, as much as we were focusing on our own games, especially that NI game, there was always someone creeping around the other corner watching how Austria was doing. So I think it was. I don't know whether it was kind of a little bit more of a comfortable feeling, but I think like you guys obviously found that Hungary game particularly tricky, and like it was probably not going as smoothly as you wanted it to. And I think that was a little bit reassuring for us, that actually like you guys weren't absolutely breezing through all the teams that you were facing. So I don't know, kind of like from my own perspective, it looked a little bit like you guys took a while to kind of warm up into things. Whereas I think like on our side of things, like if you look at our scores right up until the final, we kind of dominated a lot of our games, which I actually think could have contributed to why we struggled a little bit more in the final. Whereas as much as you guys probably had a bit more kind of a few more difficult sets or a difficult game, that probably kind of helped further on down the line where you've had to be in those kind of sticky moments, and think about things. So don't get me wrong, it was satisfying to be like, oh, okay, Austria are struggling more than we thought they would, which is nice to see. But also like having a bit of a test in the group stages probably makes you a little bit more prepared further down the line as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like, it felt from the first game like, okay, I have to give my best so we win this game. And yeah, it's much more difficult if you have that feeling for the first time in the final, as it was for you, probably.
Yeah, I can remember back to Drachten where we played like I think the first 3 games were all around 30 to nothing or a few sets, and we were just breezing through everything. And in Aussie, it was pretty much the same. And then the first time we faced any adversary, it was really, really tough, and we always struggled a lot with that. And obviously, in Graz, we had a great preparation. It was like everything was we gone over every situation. Everyone knew what to do, and obviously, it was the home world, so everyone was super prepared, and so we had that going for us, and it just worked out in every game pretty much. And now this year we had a really bad or really short preparation, and we just couldn't prepare the team for anything. At least that was what I was feeling, and it was really important for me to focus on that women's competition and get that title back. So I was really motivated to invest a lot into that women's game, and so I decided to just keep the preparation very generalized and very and also individualized, so that we worked a lot on individual stuff, and also that everyone has a good idea what the ground principles of our game plan were, but then use basically the group stages to prepare the team for that game against England, or at least that was how I looked at it. And so I decided very shortly to go back to the ice hockey lineup, even though we had two 16-year-olds and two newbies who haven't been in that team. And we knew the depth of the last year wasn't there. And I knew it was a much more risky approach. But I think like the confidence we got from that ice hockey lineup, and also like really needing to play full dodgeball and our best dodgeball from the very beginning on, and to sort of prove our strategies and get a little bit of self confidence as well. So that's why I decided to play like that. And there was a point in the Hungary game where I was like, if I would be ready to lose that game in order to achieve the objective of forming the team to where I needed it to be. And I decided in that game that I would be willing to lose it if it happens, and it wouldn't change anything. And I was very glad that it didn't happen that way, because I don't know what the complications of that would have been afterwards. But that was the decision I made. And so we really struggled from one game to the other. But that was, for me personally, as a coach, that was a really amazing experience, because we really had to work for the first time, and there was not a lot of time there. But we really needed to use every opportunity and every game plan and every little team talk to hone in those tactics and skills that we have prepared for, and form a team out of that. And for me personally, that was really cool to do. And it was in Graz, I had the feeling like we prepared for everything, and there I didn't have to do anything. Just say, three sets are over, other team in. That was basically the whole extent of what I needed to do there, and that was really good. But this time I felt like I had to do a lot of thinking. I did a lot of thinking afterwards, and really try to get the team and form a team out of those individual players that have trained for a few weeks. And so the struggle was kind of a new experience, but I think it was amazing for the team, also for the other teams, and also, like you said, for England, it was like Austria is struggling. That you want to see that as an opponent, and see that they're not like going through everyone. But I felt that it was an advantage. So maybe let's go into the semifinals, where you had Italy to play against, and you had quite a tough game there. So how did you prepare for that, and what were you expecting? How did you feel it played out, Lauren?
I think like quite a few of us have come across the kind of Italy girls before. Like I've friends with a few of them from kind of like UDO and stuff like that. Um, so we kind of knew which players to kind of look out for in particular. One of the things I really enjoy about the Italy teams that they're quite a young team across the board. Like they are so full of energy, like continuously. It's crazy, but it's also really lovely to see. I think kind of going into the semis, off of the kind of back of our Sweden game, we were feeling still quite comfortable. So I think our Sweden game finished 21-7 to us. So it's still like a comfortable score in the knockouts. But we wanted to kind of really make sure that what we're doing isn't becoming complacent. So um, we kind of didn't do too much as a team kind of beforehand. Like we kind of analysed everything that we need to prior to coming to Limerick. So I think like key for us as a team is actually making sure that we're having sufficient downtime between kind of days and stuff. I think mentals and kind of like your mental attitude each day contributes so much towards your game, that if you're kind of coming back and all you're doing is kind of talking about dodgeball and all this stuff, that it can just end up being quite a lot. So I think like everyone and kind of like Charlotte and Abby did a really good job of making sure everyone's looking after themselves, that kind of protein and everything was good, and we're eating well, getting good sleep and things. Kind of all the things you would expect normally, but stuff that's really easy to neglect when you've got so much going on. Um, and then kind of just before the game, we're kind of making sure that we were still playing our game, and that we weren't biting into kind of not necessarily the chaos that Italy bring, but just kind of like the super fast pace that they can sometimes play doesn't necessarily work to our advantage. So I think it was just making sure that we were maintaining the same kind of level-headedness and stuff like that. I think the score finished like 23-5, which is actually a bit of a shame, because I don't think that necessarily reflects how Italy played. Like a lot of the sets were really coming down to kind of fine margins. And I think they put up a kind of fantastic fight. And there are certainly some moments where like I mean, I felt like I really had to think about things, which is quite nice. Like you want to be making sure that you're having those moments before you kind of go into a final and stuff too. But I think um, we played exactly how we wanted to. We kind of executed everything that we needed. Kind of everyone got game time as well, which is really nice to see. Like even our new players. So we had Anissa and Becca join the team this year. So it's their final first Euros as well. And they managed to kind of get game time in everything, including the knockouts and stuff too. So that was really nice to see. Um, so I think, yeah, our main focus is just making sure that we were maintaining kind of our style of play and what we wanted to do, so we could then carry that over to the finals. And I think that's definitely something that we were managed to kind of execute quite well.
Cool. So, Cati, what was your experience from those struggles in the group stages on going into the quarters where we knew we had to face the last year's final competitor, Northern Ireland? How did you feel going into that quarterfinal?
Actually, I felt quite comfortable because I could see how we developed over the group stage. Like every game was a bit better. We could apply better pressure. Our fakes were more synchronized. Like I could really see how we improved, yeah, with every minute of the games, basically. And therefore, I felt quite comfortable and yeah, Northern Ireland, we know them quite well, met them probably more often in mix, but we know how good the girls can catch and how good they can dodge. So these were probably our focus points that we don't give them too many catches. And yeah, it worked out pretty well. And I think yeah, we were like fully focused on the game. And for me, it was the first game where it felt like in Graz, where there was such a spirit. Yeah, how to describe it? Like, to me, it felt like they can't beat us. Like, we're a team and we got this. And I honestly felt really bad because the result, yeah, is not how it should be, because I think it was our best result, even though it should not have been. So there, I felt really sorry because I think they played quite decently, but we just had the better answers. We managed to play out time if necessary. We just managed to play how we should have done in the group stage already.
Yeah, I think that was the time. It took a few sets against Northern Ireland where we finally found out how to apply our pressure completely, and just we just pushed Northern Ireland back every set after the other. And after three sets, they were basically gone, and they couldn't just hit us with single balls anymore. And they broke away and never came back. And that felt like even better than in Graz, where I felt like that was the first time like our pressure was so strong and so equal from both wings and also from both lineups, and I just couldn't do anything to us. So I that was the moment where I started to feel really confident about the whole endeavor and felt like everything started to click. And then we went into the Wales game. So we obviously knew Wales is also a very tough competitor who had a good tournament and had obviously wanted to fight for a medal or a final spot. So how was the confidence after the NI game going into that Wales game?
The confidence was there, but we also knew that Wales was really strong, or stronger than yeah ever before in five ball dodgeball. So yeah, I knew it was going to be a tough game, and it really turned out to be like that. They played with really good pressure. Then they had sets where they were behind, took an important catch, and the set ended in a draw. And these things, it felt like it made us think too much, like, and doubt us too much. And yeah, I could not feel the same confidence as we had it in the Northern Ireland game. And you also then lost the confidence in the ice hockey lineup at some point, and the last couple of sets we played differently. So you picked a couple of players who should finish playing the game. And we managed to win the game, but it was definitely very close. And yeah, Laney played really well on the wing, but somehow we did not always manage to make the hits or the catches we needed, and we had a really tough time, I would say.
Yeah, so you
So
probably watched it back recently,
yeah,
I think. So in the beginning, it was quite comfortable. I felt like so in the beginning it was still everything was clicking, and the confidence was there, the game plan was there, and it felt like we really pushed them back. I don't know what the score was or is, but I felt we were up ahead a few sets at least in the beginning. Is that true?
I don't know the scoreline anymore, but I definitely agree that at the beginning we started off quite well. They did win a set. I don't know. I have would have to say some random score, so I better say nothing.
Yeah.
But it was then maybe also a set where yeah, we were leading big time and they turned it around. That gave them more momentum, and yeah, they just had higher pressure then, and we were drawing back, not making the hits, and yeah.
Yeah, because I felt the difference between the NI game and the Wales game was that we started really strong against Wales and really pushed them back and put our game plan on them, and then they struggled and fell back a little bit, but they fought back. And when they fought back, they really increased the pressure even more and didn't go away like NI did. And that sort of shocked us again, and it almost broke us in a little way. And so they really clawed their way back. And I had a fail-safe plan for that game because I wasn't 100% confident in that ice hockey lineup the whole time. So even before, I didn't know if I would play an ice hockey lineup. Even I think an hour before the game, I maybe decided it before the first game against Hungary. And I think it was really important for the group games and getting that team spirit and getting everyone clicking. But I felt like in the later stages, we couldn't play like that. But after the NI game, I was like, maybe if we really play like this and really get our game back on track, then it might be possible. And so we did it again in the semifinal, and also like Yara and Henry played, who are 16 and playing currently in Zaragoza. But for them, it was like their first experience at that kind of level, and they played amazing. So it was none of their fault. They played absolutely amazing, but it was really tough for even our experienced players to push back once Wales got a little hang of it and saw that they could actually fight back with pressure. And so we pulled the fail safe, and it luckily worked, but it wasn't a game without any stomach aches on my side, at least. So, Lauren, did you see any of our, or did you talk about any of our games in the quarter or semifinals? Did that like enter your preparation for the finals?
Um, not a massive amount. I think that comes back down to kind of we need to be playing what's in front of us rather than kind of anticipating what's coming in. Similarly to what I imagine where you guys kind of had the approach with Wales, that kind of maintaining that pressure would hopefully kind of shut them back like NI, and obviously it didn't. And then you had to be reactive to that. So I think we didn't want to necessarily go in kind of being like, well, this is how Austria are going to play. I think we definitely looked at some kind of key moments from you guys of kind of when you made those sorts of switches and in your kind of style of play, and just kind of watched back a little bit to kind of see when those kind of things happened so that we can kind of maybe anticipate it a little bit when we kind of did come across you guys. So yeah, it was nice to see that you guys had struggled a little bit and kind of were given a bit more things to think about. And I think Wales kind of taking that kind of hyper aggressive approach when they were kind of like down and stuff was really nice to see, and stuff that we kind of then took as things that we could probably play to our advantage a little bit as well. So kind of gave us a nice kind of basis to go off of for sure. But yeah, I think. Then on the day was a little bit different. But it certainly gave us a few more things to think about than we had kind of looked kind of prior to coming to Limerick. So that was helpful at least.
And so what was the expectation for the final? Did you have any ideas or beliefs whether we would start with a ice hockey lineup, or who the women on our team would be that you would have to face? Was that ever something you thought about as a team or personally?
Personally, I've noticed that you'd been doing the ice hockey, but then making slight adjustments and stuff. So I think, like on an individual level, I'd kind of anticipated that you would probably look to kind of do the similar approach of having the kind of 6-on-6 switch, unless there was kind of a particular change that was needed. I kind of it looked based on kind of like your group stage and stuff that you had faith that the system was kind of still working well and there's no reason not to kind of do it again in the final. So we kind of had a bit of an inkling that it would be similar in the sense of you would go off kind of the ice hockey approach and then kind of adjust players depending on kind of maybe individuals' performances or maybe kind of making some substitutions from the bench of where you think a particular player is going to contribute something that's kind of needed for kind of the sets that you've lost or something like that. So we kind of had a small feeling, but I think yeah, at the end of the day, you never really know, do you?
No, I don't. So let's go to Cati. What was your like feeling after that Wales game? What did you as a player wanted to see in the final? Were you a fan of going with the ice hockey lineup, or did you want to start different?
I actually didn't care so much, but I could notice throughout the tournament that you had doubts about it. And it was also before the final when you said we will play with the ice hockey lineup, or that you decided it together with our captain, with Ava. I could hear the doubts of you, and it could be that these doubts sort of yeah, spread to the team. And yeah, we still started like it, but I did not feel the full confidence in it. But I also knew you could just change up the lineup. So for the game itself, like even when we were behind, I actually never felt like as if we could lose that game.
Yeah, because that was a really big struggle for me, and I actually don't know to this day what I wanted to do basically. So I had on the one side, I had Eva who really wanted to play that ice hockey lineup and wanted me to trust the team. And I personally really wanted to play that ice hockey lineup, and I still to this day believe it could have worked. But after that Wales game, I felt like the confidence wasn't big enough in the team itself that you guys really believed that you could pull it back. So basically, if we would have started with 3 sets in a row and went up, I thought it might have worked out. But as soon as we faced some adversity, it felt like we didn't have the confidence to the fullest extent that we needed to really keep pushing in those switching lineups. And so I was not really confident in it. I'm still certain that it could have worked if we would have been prepared better. But under those circumstances, I was really struggling a little. And on the other hand, I had Max Golder who told me to not do it and not fuck up that game, basically. And I think he was really stressed out during that final. So for that alone, I think it was completely worth it. But so, Lauren, from your perspective, going into that game, what were like your expectations? How did you think you started that game? How did the team feel? How was the confidence going into that final?
I think we were definitely feeling confident. Kind of the vibes from everyone on the team were really high. I think everyone was kind of really believing themselves on an individual level and on a team level as well, which is like exactly what you want going into a final. I think even with kind of regardless of how the games had gone for the group stages or the other knockout games, I think there's still a level of confidence being carried over from the Aussie Euros as well, kind of being reigning champions too. So I think that definitely kind of contributed as well, which is quite nice. Obviously, still nervous to a certain degree. Like I don't often get nervous at games, but I think if there's any game to get nervous on, it's probably the final. So feeling it a little bit more and stuff. But I think there's been a really big push for kind of making sure everyone's maintaining like good fitness levels and stuff like that. So there certainly wasn't any kind of doubts in anyone's minds that we were kind of lacking in that sense, even though it was kind of like the final game of the tournament. So I think like going into it, we're definitely kind of feeling quite good. Um, I, I knew that I was likely going to be throwing the first ball as well if we got the kind of opening rush, and I think that's always really scary for kind of anyone else in a similar boat, because if that is ever a catch, like it's so easy for your head to drop. Like I feel like there's always a lot of pressure on the first play of the game. So I was feeling a bit nervous about that. But funnily enough, so my dad passed away when I was 7, so a long time ago. And I don't necessarily believe in the afterlife. And very rare occasions, I'll be like, Dad, come on, you need to make something good happen here. And just before that final, I was like, come on, I need this first throw of the game to be the best thing it's ever going to be. And as soon as I got the double hit, like you can see my reaction on court, I went crazy. I was like, this is the best day of my life. This is huge. So that was a really nice start, and I think we definitely started feeling quite comfortable and stuff, and still kind of maintaining the sort of composure and the kind of style of play that we wanted to off of the back of kind of the semi-finals and the quarterfinals as well. So yeah, going into it, we definitely felt good.
Good. So Cati, starting those first 4 or 5 sets, you probably watched them back as well. How do you feel about them? What happened there, and what was like your perspective?
Yeah, the same thing that made Lauren super happy was like, oh dear, is this how the game needs to start? But yeah, so we then also lost the first set, but yeah, second set, the happy moment was on me, I think, when I did a hit and a catch, and we got more into the game. And yeah, after 3 sets, we switched the lineups, obviously, and I was out again already. And yeah, but we were in the game, but England is just good, that so good that it's not enough to be in the game somehow, but we needed to play at our best, and we just didn't manage to make one or the other hit. In return, we got the hits. So I didn't, yeah, how to put it, like I still never doubted that we could lose the game, but in that moment it was like, okay, we still need to adapt to them. And yeah, we had a couple of new faces, which always makes it more difficult, as Lauren said earlier. And we had a lot of players who we knew, but yeah, we still needed a little bit time to get into the game, I'd say. I don't
Okay,
know how
so
it felt from the outside.
yeah, it felt easy cheesy, breezy breezy, or whatever. So I think we went down 8-2 at some
Yeah.
point, and that was when I made the switch. And I was debating the whole time whether I want to switch something up or not, because I felt like our game plan was good and was sufficient, but I saw something that I wasn't really I didn't expect, and that was England was way more aggressive and way faster on the wings and way more reliant on their single ball throws than you guys were in the past, and you sort of turned our game plan on its head. So we wanted to put a lot of pressure from the wings, but you just went at them and just knocked them out in situations where they were just a little overreaching or overextending their spaces, and you punish them for everything. And so our women tried to counter that with being even more aggressive and trying to punish everything, but they just, since you didn't go away and you just stood your ground and just punished everything in front of you, we just sort of went straight into your knives. And so I really tried to change up and get the confidence of our wing players up, that they know what to do in those kind of situations. But it was really tough for them in that situation to really adapt. And so it was a real struggle for the first 4 or 5 sets. And so I really debated the whole time when I should switch, whether I should switch, because I was still confident it could work. But at some point, if you're behind too many sets, it just is really tough. And we were already 3 sets behind, so it already is quite a hill to climb. So that's when I decided. I think at 8-2, I decided to relieve Max Golder and switch the lineups. Was that something your team noticed, that we sort of changed our approach and that we had to abandon the ice hockey lineup? Or at what point did you realize that?
Yeah, I think we definitely noticed, firstly, that the aggression was really working. I think it's always satisfying when you see a coach having to make a change because the plays that you're executing are paying off really well. So I think that definitely kind of contributed towards our confidence quite a bit, which was nice. But I think you then also kind of have to be wary that you then know that kind of like the coach and the players have kind of clocked onto that. So the changes that they are making is going to be something that we're then going to have to think about from a different perspective, because obviously you're making your changes to kind of balance out the pressure that we're putting on. So then we definitely kind of noticed a bit of a switch, kind of like changing the wingers and stuff like that. I don't think that necessarily changed anything from our end. I think we knew what was working from us, and we just needed to kind of maintain that. I think at the point we were at, especially kind of the score being 8-2, like you said, it's not on us to make any changes at that point. It's more on you guys. So I think we just kind of wanted to make sure that we were still maintaining the same level of kind of aggression and kind of trust in each other that we had for kind of all the decisions and stuff, and the kind of catches and survivability on the back line as well from kind of other middle players. I think um, making the changes that you did, it then definitely gave us something to think about, because I think the kind of execution on our end then dropped slightly. That's when you guys started kind of getting a few more sets and stuff, and it wasn't necessarily playing to exactly how we wanted it to. So I don't think it necessarily needed a whole kind of change of approach from our end, but it's certainly something that we needed to kind of process and kind of just adapt slightly, which I still think we did a good job of. In that kind of first half. We kind of, yeah, like I said, executed everything we wanted to, even with the kind of changes that you had made. And yeah, it was nice to see that kind of how we wanted to play was kind of working quite well, and that you guys almost, like you kind of mentioned, were a little bit thrown off at kind of the level that we were bringing.
Hmm? So what was like the points you were focusing on coming from Graz to now Limerick? What were like the changes in your playing style? Because it was definitely different, and it was definitely to a the execution was to a higher level, but also like it felt like your game plan and playing style was different and way more aggressive. So was that something you were training for, to switch that up and find new solutions for old problems?
Yeah, definitely. I think like you guys do an excellent job of like your wingers sitting really far up. Like your pre's and posts are absolutely fantastic, and that's consistent, kind of regardless of who you have on the wing. And it's definitely something that I think a lot of teams find challenging. We've found challenging in the past. I think Graz is an example of that. Like you had some really dominating players that were kind of hitting us hard on those post throws and stuff, especially too. So I think the kind of approach that we kind of had beforehand was maybe a bit more like, let's take a slower kind of run up on our throws and like that sort of thing. And maybe it didn't kind of actually work the way we wanted to, that we were like, okay, let's fight their aggression with some of our own aggression. And it worked quite nicely. So I think definitely kind of at training sessions, like you said, where we were kind of really focusing on like our single ball hits, and kind of like the speed on the wings, like especially kind of utilizing the players that we have, like Abby Gower is incredibly quick up court. Imi's throw kind of on post throws and stuff is fantastic. So I think we were just also making sure that we were utilizing all the players that we had on court to the strengths that they had. So I think we definitely went from a bit more of kind of a calm and controlled sort of play to a little bit, maybe a little bit more high risk play, I think. And it definitely kind of worked in our favour. So I think we looked at kind of making that switch a little bit more between Graz and Limerick, for sure.
Hmm? Yeah, and that definitely gave us a lot to think about um, during that whole game. So, Cati, we were down 8-2, and then we changed the lineup. How did you feel? Why did the game change, or how did we get back into that game?
The first interesting thing was because of the ice hockey lineup we played before, we again ended up playing with people who we haven't played before in the tournament, which made it interesting again. But still, it clicked pretty quickly. It felt like an yeah, we managed to give better answers to, as you said before, like the one ball attacks were much more aggressive and many more hits than in the past. And also, yeah, we learned to deal better with the aggression on the wings. And it was also, if yeah, in transition play there were hits, they often worked out in our favor. And yeah, that then on top of this, there were some sets where we were behind and managed to come back. Like yeah, also the Tasers 1v5. I think that was really a turning point again. Like I have to be honest, I said to Stefan, to you, should she not just step out? And yeah, then she turned the set around and it ended in a draw. And I think yeah, plays like this, they do a lot to our minds, and they just push the team who managed to come back in a set. And Nikki and I had a set where we were behind 15 seconds before the end and we managed to win it. And yeah, that just helps for the self-confidence, and yeah, went in our favor.
So, Lauren, do you think that like the focus on more aggression, sort of that helped you a lot in the beginning of the game, also hurt you a little bit in those situations because it felt like you were really aggressive, and as long as that aggression paid off and you made your hits and you kept like a little bit of um, uh, an advantage being two players up or stuff like that, it worked really well. But then in the end, where the sets got a little bit more confusing, it was a little bit later in the game. It, at least from my perspective, it felt that you couldn't dial back from that aggression. And in some sets, like the one we five and the other set where we turned it around, the aggression worked a little bit against you guys because you couldn't completely structurally bring it to an end. Did you feel that was any aspect of that, or how do you see um, sort of that clawing back and comeback in that second half?
Yeah, I definitely. I feel like I think I was only on for a set or two in the second half. Sorry, so kind of a bit more from an outsider's perspective that we almost kind of ran with too much momentum of the aggression in the second half, especially kind of the sets that you've described, the kind of 1v5, which was absolutely ridiculous and phenomenal. Like it's those sorts of moments where we were still kind of up in those situations and could have definitely afforded to kind of play the typical safe, boring dodgeball that we also know that we're good at. But I think in the moment, when your confidence is high off of that kind of aggressive play, maybe kind of the girls on court just wanted to kind of maintain it. And stuff, which I don't think is necessarily a bad decision. But I think, yeah, kind of looking back and kind of having watched the game back and been off court in those moments, I think there were definitely times where we could have afforded to just kind of like maybe reset. I think like the moment Cati was saying about like one of the catches that kind of swung the set around could have potentially been a moment where we actually kind of just reset and kind of took the draw in a lot of the situations potentially. So yeah, I think it worked incredibly well at the beginning, but it's definitely something that I think reflecting on the game we could have definitely chilled out a little bit towards the end, especially when the score difference was getting closer and closer and you guys were kind of building momentum. I think especially kind of the second half, we're getting like three sets in a row. It was kind of like, okay, we probably kind of need to reflect a little bit on what's happening now, and maybe we didn't do that as much as we needed to, but it's certainly something that we can now look back on ahead of worlds, euros and stuff in the future and be like, okay, we've seen these moments happen now, so let's make sure they don't happen again.
And so, from a personal side, I just have to ask the question. You don't have to answer it, but like you're playing really well. You're up a lot of points in the final, and then you're subbed off. Does it? How do you personally feel about that? Um, Like obviously it's the coach just because I'm the coach, I'm subbing people off like that. So and like how do you feel as a player when you feel like it's working, everything's going great, or maybe it's turning a little bit? Um, what was your thoughts in that kind of situation? And also looking back at that game, watching the second half from the outside, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's really tricky. Um, I think I don't know particularly why I was taken off. I did make the silly mistake of at the after party going drunkenly asking our coach why I was taken off, and he very professionally was like, "Oh, we just needed to make a change," which is absolutely the right answer to say
Yeah.
when I was in that situation, um, and I haven't spoken about it since. Um,
Fair
but
enough.
I think kind of coming off, it was my kind of personal feelings were like I've done exactly what my job needs to be, kind of as a middle player, kind of for the first half and kind of the start of the second half. And there's not a single person that's on our bench that I wouldn't trust to be able to kind of come into that game and do exactly what they need to do either. So there wasn't any point that I kind of stepped off court and then started kind of doubting the team. So I think, yeah, it's obviously always a little disappointing when you feel like you're contributing really well, and you're then kind of taken off. And there's definitely a conversation that I probably will have with kind of the coaches at some point when I'm not drunk, and figure out why and kind of what can I do next time to make sure that I'm kind of staying on court for as long as I can, really. But I think there's no saying that the score or anything would have gone differently if I was still on court. I might have still been the same as the girls and playing kind of that aggressive game that kind of then ended up not working in our favour. I think it's always tricky for the people that are coming on in those moments where you have lost quite a few sets and stuff to then kind of jump back into the game and really know that you need to make an impact. And I think Tara and Imi kind of switching. So obviously Imi injured her ankle. Is you're not particularly prepared for that moment. Like that's a really difficult situation for Tara to step in on as well. So I don't envy anyone in that sort of position. So yeah, personally, like I trusted any of the girls that came on court, but it is always a little disappointing when I felt like I was contributing quite well to the game. But yeah, hopefully I'll have that conversation soon. And I can figure out what I can do next time.
Yeah, for sure. Because I obviously had that conversation a few times from the other side, and I had that conversation, sort of that conversation after Graz with Cati, where we talked about how she felt on the court and stuff like that. So I think it's quite interesting to see like those two perspectives of that situation, because the coach is always judged by the result in the end, and if it works out, then everyone's like, ah, okay, he made the right decisions and swapped in the right players. And if it doesn't work out, then obviously everyone likes to point out the reasons why it obviously didn't work out and how many big mistakes everyone made. So it's always like that sort of situation where in hindsight everyone's smarter and maybe probably switch a few things, and maybe I could have saved Max Golda a few years of stress-free life, and his heart would thank me for it if I would have stuck to another lineup in the beginning, or maybe it wouldn't have worked and I wouldn't have any idea what to switch. So in the end, obviously winning that final, it's really easy to look back on it. But if we'd lost it really close and I would have had to think about maybe I switched the lineups too late, should I have started differently, then it would have been a completely different story. And so obviously everyone tries to make the right decision in those moments, and there are debates in every sport about those deciding or maybe potentially deciding decisions, which is quite fascinating to me, because as a coach I have a few like principles or thoughts why I swap out players and how I swap them out. And in a women's team, at least from my experience, that is very different to a male dominant team or even to a mixed team, like how I swap people out. And so for me as a coach, it's always the most important thing to like keep the momentum and the self-confidence of the team as high as possible. And that was something that when I feel that that is lacking in some way, and maybe it's one person or maybe it's more than one person, maybe it's the team, maybe it's certain players who bring a little bit of restlessness or doubt into that system, it is really tough to make switches without feeding into those doubts. So if you make a stupid decision, if you make a bad don't know, if you get hit out where you shouldn't have been and you get swapped out immediately, then it makes something with the player and it also does something to the team. So if the team feels like there is not enough trust that you can make mistakes, but also on that stage there is not a lot of room for those minor little mistakes, and I think that's probably a podcast in its own. But yeah, it's something to think about, and I think if you have that conversations, hopefully you get the answer you want. But I honestly don't think you will, because there is often, at least from my perspective, obviously I'm not your coach, so I don't have to do that conversation, which is nice for me. But it's like really tough, even in hindsight, for me often to reflect on why I made decisions the way I did, and then I try to like find reasons for it, but often I don't even know if those were the reasons. And sometimes there are decisions that maybe a player or someone else puts a lot of thought into, where I have not at all thought about it, where I just thought, she looks a little tired, or I think, that player hasn't played in a long time. And there is often so much that goes on behind the scenes, and people interpret into every situation where there actually wasn't a lot of thought from maybe the coach or someone else. But I think the important or really interesting topic here is like how to handle those sort of situations on court. And I think the way you answered that question is really professional, and I think that is the way you should answer that question. Where you look, obviously it is never fun to be swapped off in any game, unless it doesn't matter. But obviously, in the final, you want to play. You worked hard for that, and if you get swapped off, you obviously look for the explanation for it. But it probably wasn't anything had anything to do with you, and also the team is so much more important. And I think that was really nice of you to say that the trust of a player into their coach, that they know even though the decision is not nice for me, it's just it needs to be the right one for the team. And even though I'm not really happy about it, I need to go into the outbox and support my team and really spread more self-confidence and tell the player who goes in to rock that shit, and really not let any of those doubts and hurt feelings by any means let the team affect. And that is really tough to do. So I think you handled that very well. So I wish you a lot of luck with that conversation with your coach. And if he has really good answers, please tell him to write me, because I need those answers for those
I'll let you know.
situations. Okay, so that was a quite of a big rant. I didn't want to do that, but here we are. So, Cati, so in the end, we clawed back and we turned out in our favor this time. So, what were the emotions, and also like how did the last few sets and situations feel from your perspective, and how were the emotions after the whistle blew?
Yeah, talking about the team, like, yeah, they were cheering so well from the sideline. Like, everybody was happy. Uh, every hit got celebrated. Like, yeah, I really loved it how we were one team, and yeah, that was really a big support. And the relief after the whistle was just, yeah, it was huge, because we struggled a little bit through the group stage, and it's, yeah, it was tough, and we really wanted this title back, and therefore the relief was really, really big. And yeah, I yeah, I was also super relieved, and it was also the reason why I was then basically mentally done for the mix game afterwards, but that's a different story then. But yeah, it was great. Like, really loved it.
Good. So the biggest emotion basically was relief. Was there joy or
For sure. Like, it was everything. It was just happiness, and especially because I knew we were not as well prepared as we should have been, and it was much, much harder than it was in Graz, for example. And yeah, it was tight till the end. and yeah, the spectators were probably very happy about it, that we had such an exciting game. But yeah, it was a lot of weight coming off the shoulders, sort of, that we managed it.
Okay, so I'm talking to the other side of that experience. Lauren, how did you experience those last few sets and then obviously after the whistle blew?
That is the first time I've ever cried at a dodgeball game. So it it was disappointing, but I think that just kind of shows that the emotions that are coming into it. Um, the result in general was obviously not what we had wanted, but I think we had also executed a lot of things that we wanted to. So there was a lot of good takeaways, but like immediately after the game, I think everyone was just sad, and I think that's expected. Um, Especially having then like lost the title. On an individual level, I kind of my goals specifically for Limerick was just kind of solidify myself in the starting six, and I had done that. So kind of reflecting back now, um, I'm kind of happy with how the tournament went. I think it really makes me chuckle about the fact that you've called me and Cati powerhouses, because in my perspective, I am still a very small fish in a big pond, um, especially compared to the likes of you two and things. So that does make me laugh. So I think it was obviously really just like disappointing, and not what we had wanted, but lots to take away from the situation. And on a personal level, I was happy with kind of how my first Euros went. Really,
Okay, yeah, I think it's always a mixed bag of emotions, but I feel like that a final that is that close and that could have gone either way and like was something for the spectators and for the players and for the coaches, and there were lots of really tough decisions, good plays, highlights, stupid mistakes, everything was in there, and I felt that was, at least I feel, the one of the most emotional finals I have ever experienced as a coach. So that was really a final where I felt there was so much dodgeball in there. It was packed with action, also lots of strategically really well executed games and plays. Also a little bit of discussions in between, but it was just such a yeah. It was a completely emotional game, and so obviously joy and tears are really close in the after the whistle blows, but in the end, I think those are the finals you can really look back to, and you can remember those situations and take them with you for better or worse. And like the title in Graz was really important as a title for me personally, but like the games were not emotional at all because it was so clear after one half that we will win that, and that gave me a lot of pride and joy. But this was really a struggle, and if I feel like if you have to struggle as a team and work for each other, and even though if you lose at the end in that final, and obviously everyone wants to win, but if you can be proud of yourself after such a tournament and you know what you've gone through to get to that position, and even though it not everything has worked out the way you dreamed, you can really look back with a lot of pride on those moments and with a lot of emotions, and that it's, I think, what we all basically do this for. So obviously in this case we are the happy winners, and you're gonna try to take revenge next time, and I think the circle is just gonna repeat itself for a few times. So on that, obviously the Limerick is done. It played out pretty much as most people would have expected, and I think like the women's competition was the closest in every like prediction I had on this podcast as well, where everyone was pretty much, obviously there were Camry and Northern Ireland would have predicted or wished for something else, but in the end I felt like the level was really good in this women's competition, and also the 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 end placements were really tight, like first to fourth place. They were all really good and exciting games, and but in the end were good. Like I don't know where I really wanted to finish, but I felt like it was in the end like dodgeball won, and it wasn't because of boring dodgeball or only one tactic. There was so much ups and downs in every game, and lots of comebacks, and needing to like move little things in between, where I felt this was the highest level of dodgeball, where we reached a point where you couldn't just go into a game and say this is the game plan and it works, at least at the later stages. And for me personally, that was really cool to see, and I felt that was very exciting as well for the future, because I think you have to prepare now even better to reach those final spots and handle those tough situations and get those emotions. So don't know where I'm leading. This is not really a question or an answer. Yeah. Anyone wants to add anything to that, or we just leave it as like that?
Yeah, I think I totally agree. And also talking about the final, like we started as I think almost every final or every time against England that England goes into a lead, but their level of play really improved from cards, and yeah, that was also amazing to see. And it was great to get new tasks, and that was basically all over the games. Like you couldn't say anymore, oh yeah, this country plays like this or that, but yeah, their variety of play got much bigger, and that made it more interesting to watch. It made it more interesting for players because you got a lot of uh, tasks on the court which you needed to solve. And yeah, I think spectators and players are, yeah, benefiting from that a lot.
For sure.
Yeah, I think from a wider perspective as well, like it's really nice to see the development of the kind of game and the style of play that everyone's kind of producing. And it's really nice that kind of it's not so clear cut on where everyone's going to end up now. And I think it's just way more engaging than it used to be. I think of obviously what I'm used to playing now compared to what I've seen from maybe 10 years ago is a whole different ball game. But I think that also helps from kind of like the wider public view that it's a lot more kind of intense and competitive than it used to be. And then hopefully that will kind of get more people involved, maybe through your more non-traditional routes, because it's something they've maybe seen on like YouTube or something like that. Or they've heard about it on a podcast, who knows? So it's nice that it's kind of reaching that sort of level where it's getting more and more engagement from people outside of the community as well.
Absolutely. So on that note, if you would like, because obviously we have a lot of women and the women's level is completely exciting, but still like throwing balls at people is still, at least in my experience in the past, was more uh, often something that the boys enjoyed more than the girls. But you can see really that even on the highest level, it's just such an enjoyable sport for both genders or sexes. And so, if you could, as basically the pinnacle of the sport as it is right now, make a little bit of an advertisement for young female players who maybe think about starting dodgeball, or who maybe are playing currently in Saragossa and want to reach those highs and reach those finals, what is like a little bit of an advert, or what you would you tell them from your experience? Why is dodgeball the thing they should really push for, and why is it awesome to be a top dodgeball player in the female division? I start with you, Lauren.
Um, Oh, that's really tough because so many good reasons to
I
label.
should have said that question before, but
Yeah, no, that's okay. Um, I think like there is no ceiling, and I think that for me is something that's really important. Is that this sport and the kind of the level we're at is only going to improve, and I think if you have the drive and the kind of desire to want to push yourself to the highest of levels, like there is no limits to kind of what you can achieve, and kind of every aspect of the dodgeball side of things, whether it's kind of like physical, like agility, strength, or kind of more of like the mental side of things. Like there's always ways of improving it. And just kind of being able to learn from such wonderful people around you, and kind of take it all in makes it so enjoyable regardless of which level you're at. And I think that's something that makes me just want to continue playing for as long as I possibly can until the younger generation comes in, and I should probably hand over the reins. But I think it's it's something that uses every single part of you, and something that everyone should take kind of that people should be proud of. So I think, yeah, you can go so far no matter kind of where you're starting from or how you get into the sport. I think as long as you kind of have that mental attitude of wanting to be the best, there's absolutely no reason why you can't achieve it.
Awesome. So in Cati, you are currently reigning European and world champion. You're current MVP of the European Championships as well. What would you tell Leni in a few years why she has to play dodgeball? Why it's the coolest thing ever? Well, she
She's
obviously
playing
knows, but
already.
yeah, obviously she knows, but
She has to join training every Wednesday, so she
fair
is
enough.
throwing
Okay,
balls
let's
already.
let's say for a little girl that isn't forced to play dodgeball from the first day on, but maybe finds dodgeball at a later stage at like 6 years old. Why, as the reigning champion of this division, why should she try to become you in the future?
Yeah, I think that Lauren named pretty much every point I could think of as well. And yeah, I think that's reason enough. Like you have the community, but you also like your whole body is involved. But it's not only the body, it's also the mind. And as she also said, it's a young sport, so it keeps developing. It's, yeah, we have not reached the top of it by far, not like I can't even imagine how dodgeball will look like in 10 years. So I think that's a really interesting thing, because most sports, okay, if you want to be the best, you have to do this or that. But in dodgeball, like, you have to keep being creative still, because yeah, there's so much more to develop and to, yeah, we will only know in a couple of years.
Definitely. So there is no blueprint yet. There's only the blueprint of how you become Cati Weber or Lauren Gallagher. But if you want to compete probably in 10 years, you got to be even better than those two. So you're in
Surely.
for a ride at this point. So I think if you want to get into some other topics or talk about anything of the about the experience at Limerick or anything else, now is a good time. Otherwise, we're gonna jump into a few listeners' questions that I've selected, and then yeah. But if you've got anything else you want to add at this point, please feel free.
Well, it doesn't. No, it partly fits the topic actually, talking about the future. But what I'm still really missing is that there are books about dodgeball, training books. I used to be a volleyball coach, and I really liked at the beginning to know a couple of exercises or how to structure training, but there's like nothing out there like this for dodgeball. So when COVID hit us, I had the idea, okay, let's write a book. I have plenty of time. But yeah, as we heard, times changed. I have a daughter, and Stefan probably knows what it means time wise. So if there are any enthusiastic people out there who would be interested to write a book about dodgeball, and I'm basically thinking of like something very complete, like which involves how to structure training, but of course, including exercises, what to take care of, injury prevention. That, yeah, I would like to write something where a stranger who saw dodgeball somewhere says, okay, I want to start a dodgeball training, and they can take this book and do a training where not half of the people get injured after the first weeks because there's no warm up or whatever. So, yeah, if anybody's interested in this, native speakers more than welcome. you, so feel free to contact me.
Awesome. So, what are you gonna call it? Is it the Dodgeball Bible or Dodgeball for Dummies, or do you have any working title?
I'm not from the creative side, like that's why I need people.
All right, Lauren, can you help her out, please?
I can try some illustrations. I can't promise
Ooh,
how good they'll be. They
Oh,
might look a little similar to how your kids might draw something, but who knows?
that is completely fine. I think if you have like circles and dots, then you can basically structure a dodgeball tactics session.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely something. We need more content in whichever way we can get it to push dodgeball out there and help people to keep the burdens to enter the sport as low as possible, and to get everyone who wants to get involved a possibility. So if the world champion and MVP wants to write a book, I will read it. If you make an audiobook, and Lauren, you can probably narrate the audiobook. That would be much better than if any of us do it. That would
yeah.
be a weird audiobook otherwise.
I can contribute to that. I'm happy
Yeah,
to
I
do
think
a little voiceover.
you definitely have the voice for that. That would be cool. Okay, so we got at least that covered. So we just need some more topics or some stuff to put into that book. So we got the illustration and the narration. Now we need you guys to fill that book with proper content. All right, so we're gonna get into a few listener questions because I there were a few that I found might be interesting for everyone, and obviously everyone in dodgeball wants to know how to throw harder. So I don't have written down the names who asked me those questions, so I'm just gonna whoever did that, thank you for that. So how does no, that is a wrong question. So how do you improve your throw, especially as a woman? I Do you think there is a difference for women, or is it just more of a topic for women to get a good throw? So, as probably two of the strongest throwers in Europe, what are your takes on throwing power?
Um, it's I think everyone needs to play to their strengths. I think I don't help particularly well because I have quite big hands, which makes it a lot easier. But I know, like having coached at kind of university level and stuff, in particular with people that are starting, if you struggle to hold the ball, it's really difficult to kind of get a decent level of kind of like power and accuracy. So I think first of all, it's just kind of actually taking the time to work out what your strengths are. I think in particular for kind of the women, like utilizing your body as much as possible to kind of generate as much power. And kind of using that to your advantage is huge, because I think a lot of people just think if you've got really big strong muscles that you can throw really fast, but there's also way more that goes into it. So yeah, hitting the gym and kind of getting strong is always going to help. But I think working out kind of what's comfortable for you and how you can utilize the rest of your body in terms of kind of like making sure you've got correct like hip movement, make sure that you're using your other arm to kind of support your throw and kind of having a good rotation and stuff, kind of all contributes towards these things. And equally, if you can't hold the ball, or you're struggling to kind of push through, then you still see top level players kind of doing the more like your typical hook throw. I think like Karen from our England team is a prime example of someone who doesn't follow the traditional kind of way of throwing, but she'll still ping the toes off of absolutely anyone opposite her. So there's loads of different ways to do it, and you've just got to work out what's best for you.
Right. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I don't think that there's so much difference between men and women, but I don't know if it's because of how girls are brought up, but they're usually girls struggle more with the right technique of throwing. And what I really like to do is to do a video analysis, like filming other women throwing a ball in slow motion and then breaking down the movement, and also training only parts of the movement, because it the throw is something you've done probably thousands of times in your life, and it's really hard if you learned a wrong movement to adapt it, and it takes so many repetitions, and it's such a complex movement if you split it up. that I really like to practice with people just small parts of the movement until they become automatic and then move on from there. But yeah, it needs a lot of time. And yeah, I usually advise players to use the warm up to work on their throwing technique, because there they can really focus, break down their movements. And in a game, you cannot think about, oh, okay, I need to keep my elbow high and I need to do that sling, oh, and I need to aim. That just doesn't work.
Hmm? Cool. Yeah, I think that covers a lot of the bases. So another question is from Sam. With some big names retiring in recent years and maybe more to come, what country will have more success with fresh faces? And I think he's going about Austria and England in this case. What do you think, Cati?
I surely think that France is becoming
It's
big
just, I
in.
think it's just Austria and
Oh,
England.
so wait, maybe I didn't understand the question right.
So because so a lot of big names retiring in recent years and maybe more to come, what country will have more success with fresh faces when they're
Oh,
established?
okay, so it's just between the two countries of us.
Yeah.
Um, Interesting question. I think England definitely has the bigger playing pool, but Austria has the advantage of still most players being situated in Vienna and having the opportunity to train together. It's just a few clubs where players are spread out, and that's definitely something that gives an advantage if you play with your teammates most of the season. So yeah, I still hope that Austria can hold up to the level we're playing now, but yeah, hard to say. Like
Yeah, Lauren,
they're
what's your opinion on that?
Um, I think it's also really difficult to say by country, because I think if you break down the teams individually, you'll see integration varies a lot. And I think we kind of come on top in that situation, that we're better at integrating the kind of newer players across both men's and women's. Whereas I think you guys in particular, you see, I think it was. You kind of had your number 21 and 93. I can't remember their names for the girls that started. Obviously, they're obviously at juniors at the moment. For the
Hmm?
women's, were playing at, at Euros, but you don't really see that in your men's side as much. You kind of still have your solid, kind of your older level players. So I think there's definitely potential from both sides to kind of have some really good younger players coming up. But I think at the moment we're just capitalizing on that more than you guys are.
Hmm? So we'll see who's right on
Yeah,
that.
we'll
So
have to review this in a few years' time to see
yeah, definitely.
whether it's worked out like that.
Or we see at the youth Euros who wins in the end, and then we'll know what the future brings. So another question from Sam: if Katy had to pick an English club and Lauren an Austrian club to represent, which club would it be, Lauren?
Um, I would have to say ninjas. It was
yes.
definitely between ninjas and nasties, but I think from just the videos I've seen, especially from like Vienna calling and stuff, ninjas just like that look like they're having so much fun all the time, and I absolutely want to be part of that. So yeah, if anyone wants any guests for Vienna calling, then please hit me up because I will happily come and play.
Ooh,
But yeah, I think ninjas for this one.
all right, Katy. That's obviously the wrong answer, by the way, Lauren. But it's fine.
I disagree. Perfect answer.
I
Uh,
disagree with Lauren as well, so we all agree.
so I think I will go for Spartans because I just know most players there, and there are also players I've known for the longest time. But I've also joined the Storms training like years ago, and yeah, it was also some really great atmosphere there. So I wouldn't mind playing for Storm either.
Yeah. I
I
think
think
Lauren.
we'd always have a spot for you if you wanted to
Yeah.
come play for Storm.
So
Good to know.
everyone is happy. At least Katya and Lauren are happy now. So we're gonna join them up. That's no
Stefan's
fun for
crying.
anyone else. Ah, that's so mean. All right, so we're gonna end it on the most important question by Wilkie, and I'm gonna try to spell that word because I cannot say it. So, how does Lauren get her booty looking so voluptuous? Is that a word?
Yeah, voluptuous.
Oh, it's got
Um,
it. Oh, nice.
yeah, that was close. I honestly, I just have to give a shout out to my mum for that. That she has just blessed me with good
Oh,
genes.
jeans. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, purely genetics, and maybe occasionally some hip thrusts in the gym and some squats. But yeah, that's mostly my mum. So shout out
Okay,
to
so
her
that
for that
is
one.
not reachable for the mere mortals among us.
No, unfortunately not. Sometimes you're just blessed.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I hope Wilkie is happy with that answer because I think he's crying somewhere now because he will never reach that goal. Ah, well,
No,
we
no,
can't
you
have
won't.
it all. All right. I think with this answered, I'm pretty happy. If you girls are happy, we're going to bring this to an end.
Yeah, it
And
was nice. It
Yeah.
was lovely speaking to you both.
absolutely, that
Thanks for
was,
having us.
yeah, that was an absolute pleasure. Really wanted to talk to you and get a little bit more insight into the women's side of dodgeball. And I hope lots of women listen to this episode because I don't know for what reason, but I obviously have more male guests on, but also my listeners are leaning, as I've seen the statistics, and we have a lot of room to improve on the female side. So I hope this motivates them young girls to watch some current legends of the game and listen to them and learn from them. And I obviously had a blast. And so with that, keep throwing those balls, try not to get caught, and take care, everyone. Good night.